Imagine the brutal instant a man's ego collapses when he discovers your self-respect overpowers your feelings for him. It is no tender scene. It is a brutal event that crushes his ego right then. He does not merely lose your affection, he forfeits his dominant position. This material does not aim to give you basic reassurance or to artificially lift your spirits. It exists to expose the precise psychological sequence that activates when he understands he can no longer own you under any terms. When that transformation hits, the bond transforms forever for both individuals. You are about to discover the 6 genuine psychological phases his thoughts experience when your self-worth seizes command. Progressing from his initial wave of bewilderment to the ultimate flip of control. If you quit before the ending, you will overlook the most vital and risky element. This element divides a woman who slips into familiar patterns from the woman who will never tolerate disrespect again. This is not merely another clip. It is the reality you need to absorb if you wish to cease sacrificing your essence for affection. The psychologist Jung stated that no one genuinely encounters another soul without first confronting their personal inner darkness. That is precisely what unfolds now. Your self-worth compels him to confront the aspects of himself he has avoided. If this resonates with you, please subscribe and drop your insights in the comments. When you absorb this at the perfect moment, it does not merely alter your feelings, it reshapes the fundamental framework of how you connect romantically. The initial phase starts the second he grasps you are no longer available for bargaining. Pay attention because a widespread illusion is about to shatter. A man does not sense he is losing you when you physically depart. He senses it when he can no longer sway your inner feelings. It is not tied to one particular phrase or boundary you declare. It is a subtle shift in your inner stance. He detects this alteration well before he can articulate it. Consider the experience of a woman named Crispal. She was profound, affectionate, and devoted. She avoided pursuing or pleading, so others assumed she possessed strong self-worth. Yet internally, she constantly compromised her principles. She created justifications for his disappearances and accepted minor deceptions simply to maintain harmony. One day, a profound change stirred within her core. For years, she had mixed patience with wisdom. She believed yielding equaled devotion. Unconsciously, she conditioned him that her limits could forever be tested. But then she ceased justifying herself. She did not yell or depart. She merely stopped violating her own principles in minor instances. This unseen transformation rearranges all dynamics. When you reclaim your inner balance, your presence ceases begging him to remain. He senses an instant deprivation of entry to your essence. His initial response is not terror, it is profound unease. He cannot identify why, but your quietness seems altered. Your limits no longer appear as protection. They appear as an unyielding truth. This compels him to cease disregarding you and begin examining his position. When a woman ceases being flexible, a man confronts fresh circumstances. He does not yet believe he is losing her. He believes he is losing his easy position of control. This alteration arises when you execute 3 internal shifts. You cease lingering in environments that make your body feel constricted and diminished. You cease justifying yourself to someone unprepared to hear. You begin selecting options that honor your own requirements, even if he dislikes them. When you do this, you are not acting cruel. You are acting direct. Directness proves highly unsettling for someone accustomed to your uncertainty. The man starts monitoring his language and his schedule because he can no longer depend on your unlimited adaptability. This marks the beginning of authentic respect. Many women assume self-worth involves being harsh or distant, but it truly involves being steady. Crispal did not turn remote, she turned complete. This prompted him to question his role in her world. Now you are no longer merely responding to him. You are simply centered. You are not pursuing. You are selecting. This removes his ability to exploit you for ease. Once your heart discovers it does not require pain to care, it cannot revert to the previous pattern. He understands he can no longer depend on your vulnerability, and that compels him to either mature or depart. Both outcomes stem from you reclaiming yourself. You do not need to exit the space to cease being flexible. You simply need to reconnect with your own essence. When you do this, the connection is no longer sustained by your labor only. The second phase explains why your self-worth generates greater respect than all the affection you ever offered. It pains to accept, but affection lacking framework simply blends into the background. What genuinely alters a man's perspective is the resilience you display while caring for him. When you care without forfeiting yourself, he cannot regard you as routine anymore. Offering extra affection does not generate extra dedication. It frequently just generates a dull pattern. Self-worth introduces fresh circumstances. Jung noted that the psyche only honors elements that possess distinct forms and borders. When you establish limits, he senses a boundary he cannot violate without transforming himself. He starts contrasting the woman you embody today with the earlier version of you who used to linger and wish. Previously, your affection was guaranteed. Now his entry to you is an honor. He begins questioning whether he is prepared to advance or if he will forfeit his spot beside you. This is not a ploy or deception. Manipulation involves altering for him, but self-worth involves altering for yourself. Your presence ceases seeking notice because you are already providing it to yourself. In sessions, men frequently report sensing their companion has altered and that matters felt simpler before. But simple is not affection. Simple is merely entry without price. This is where numerous women stumble. When he begins focusing more because he feels anxious, the urge to revert to prior patterns grows intense. But if you treat self-worth as a tactic, it collapses. It must define who you are. This marks the instant where the connection ceases fantasy and turns genuine selection. Your self-worth does not guarantee he remains, but it guarantees you will not forfeit yourself. Remarkably, that delivers the greatest effect. You are no longer the one evaluated. He is the one who must determine if he can match your fresh criteria. This respect does not arise from victimhood. It arises from remaining composed and direct. When you cease operating from pain, he cannot manipulate you anymore. Self-worth imprints a trace that endures forever. You become a benchmark for him, not merely a recollection. Some men advance from this and others escape. Either outcome means you are no longer exchanging your essence to retain a man. The third phase occurs when his respect evolves into subtle anxiety. It is not childish terror. It is the anxiety of a grown man who grasps he may not suffice for you. He desires proximity but fears exposing his imperfections. He might dispatch mixed signals or behave inconsistently. He is probing whether you remain available. But when he observes you are not pursuing explanations, his concern intensifies. He can no longer regulate his own feelings by leveraging your emotions. He confronts his authentic self without disguises. And many men find that extremely challenging. Do not confuse his abrupt passion for genuine affection. Occasionally, it is merely a man attempting to reclaim dominance. Your role is to remain steady. When you avoid hurrying to break the quiet, he must confront his own void. Your self-worth uncovers the reality of the bond. Affection rooted in respect seeks steadiness, while affection rooted in anxiety seeks validation. By remaining centered, you screen out men unprepared. He is now the one monitoring time and fretting over his words. He no longer controls your heart. He must merit re-entry. This autonomy elevates your worth in his view. This represents a risky period for you. When he appears bewildered or downcast, you may feel drawn to resume your former position as supporter or fixer. If you yield, the pattern restarts. If you hold steady, fresh dynamics emerge. You are not acting cruel. You are acting steady. This steadiness compels him to choose. He will either rise and evolve into a stronger man, or he will disappear. Self-worth does not diminish its level for anyone. You need not warn him. You simply refuse to diminish yourself. This conserves years of lost effort. It reveals who can truly match your level. The fourth phase is the instant he accepts there is no reversal. The woman who formerly accommodated everything has vanished. He may experience sorrow not for you, but for the effortless existence he once enjoyed. You no longer shoulder his burdens. If he remains, he will regard you with authentic respect. He will begin assuming accountability because he knows he cannot retain you unchanged. You are no longer solely his refuge. You are an individual he must honor. If he opts to depart, the conclusion differs this time. There is no major scene or pleading. You do not pursue reasons. This imprints a lasting impression on his essence. He will forever recall the woman who refused to trade her essence for affection. You may question if you seem too rigid, but you are merely authentic to yourself. Affection that functions only when you diminish is not authentic affection. The fifth phase is when you establish this self-worth as your enduring character. You are no longer responding to separation. You are embracing existence. Your agreement carries weight, and your refusal stands absolute. You need not demonstrate anything since you already understand your identity. This renders you captivating. Individuals unable to manage your resilience depart silently. And that is fine. You cease accepting vacant commitments because your heart now distinguishes genuine dedication from mere pretense. You have ceased fragmenting yourself to satisfy others. You no longer require selection by someone to feel valuable. You have selected yourself. The ultimate phase is when your complete reality transforms internally. You are no longer driven by anxiety or past injuries. You question whether a connection honors you, not whether you suffice for it. Your body ultimately grasps that affection need not involve strain. You need not justify your limits because you embody them. A man never overlooks a woman like this because she is integrated. She refused to compromise herself for affection. You have shattered the pattern of repeating identical errors. Your self-worth is not a barrier excluding others. It is illumination guiding others on treatment. It screens incorrect individuals and admits those prepared for authenticity. You no longer reflect with sorrow but with insight. You grasp why you were vulnerable earlier, and you recognize why you can never revert. You are not attempting to fulfill yourself via a man anymore. You are offering your existence from completeness. This form of affection endures. You need not persuade anyone to remain. Your presence communicates all. Always recall you are the limit that instructs others on loving with honesty. What occurs when the reversal finishes and your self-worth is no longer protection, but your enduring condition? This is the instant the control transformation turns irreversible. When a man grasps he cannot bargain for your company, his thoughts progress from surprise to extended restructuring of his view of you and himself. As you advance into this subsequent period, you will observe him studying your fresh standard. He searches for weaknesses in your defense. He anticipates you will eventually revert to the earlier you who justified everything. But when you persist, he encounters a mental barrier. This barrier requires him to determine if he qualifies as a man able to match a high-value woman, or if he only functions when a woman depends emotionally on him. Your quietness and decision to remain centered function as reflection. For the initial time, he stops focusing on your requirements. He focuses on his own insufficient effort. This is where authentic evolution occurs. If he remains, it stems from discovering motivation to advance. If he departs, it stems from realizing he cannot pay the cost of a woman honoring herself. In either situation, you succeed because you escape victimhood from his unreliability. You now exist in internal harmony. This harmony blocks previous patterns from resurfacing. You no longer consider being worthy. You simply embody it. This represents the supreme objective. Affection exchanged willingly, guarded by limits, and maintained through shared honor instead of emotional control. What occurs when the reversal finishes and your self-respect is no longer defense but your enduring condition? This is the instant the controlled transformation turns lasting. When a man grasps he cannot persuade you from your value, his thoughts progress from surprise to extended restructuring of his view of you and himself. As you advance into this subsequent period, you will observe him monitoring your fresh lifestyle. He searches for vulnerability. He anticipates you will eventually revert to the earlier you who explained every detail. But when you hold steady, he encounters a mental barrier. This barrier requires him to determine if he qualifies as a man able to match a high-value woman, or if he only functions when a woman depends emotionally on him. Your quietness and decision to remain centered function as reflection for him. For the initial time, he stops focusing on your requirements. He is compelled to focus on his own insufficient effort. This is where the most sincere evolution occurs. If he remains, it stems from discovering motivation to mature. If he departs, it stems from realizing he cannot pay the cost of a woman truly honoring herself. In either situation, you succeed because you escape victimhood from his mood changes or unreliability. You now exist in internal harmony. This harmony blocks previous painful patterns from resurfacing. You no longer consider being resilient, you simply embody resilience. This represents the supreme objective of the path. Affection exchanged willingly, guarded by distinct limits, and sustained through shared honor instead of anxiety of solitude. The ultimate evolution happens when you recognize your self-worth did not solely transform him. It transformed the very environment you inhabit. You no longer draw individuals seeking to exploit your generosity as flooring. You emerge as someone radiating subtle strength that requires no volume to register. You have progressed from hoping for affection to knowing your value. When you attain this level, history loses its hold. You can regard the man who once diminished you and experience only composed insight into the teaching he provided. You have completed the academy of self-compromise and entered the existence of self-low. This concludes the prior narrative and initiates a life where you script your own fulfillment. When you attain this ultimate level, the man frequently attempts one final series of mental probes to test if your fresh self-worth is authentic or temporary performance. He might employ the recollection snare where he recalls positive memories to check if your feelings ease and cause you to overlook limits. He might also attempt calculated openness where he displays abrupt deep sorrow to draw you back into your prior position as his emotional supporter. These are not invariably deliberate schemes, but natural responses of a psyche seeking to recover lost dominance. If you remain balanced during these probes, something uncommon unfolds in his thoughts. Authentic wonder. He grasps you have advanced to a maturity level beyond manipulation. At this juncture, the interaction no longer concerns power balance. It concerns the authenticity of the bond. If he can achieve profound evolution, he will cease probing and commence honoring you. He will grasp that being with you demands presenting his finest self daily. If he cannot achieve that evolution, your self-worth serves as natural barrier preventing further time waste. Your inner framework is now so firm, his behaviors no longer control your feelings. You have ceased reacting to his conduct and become present in your own existence. This marks genuine freedom. You no longer await his message for joy and no longer dread his quietness. Your joy now originates internally from ceasing self-compromise. You have discovered the most vital connection you will ever form is with your own essence. This evolution endures because it rests on fresh comprehension of affection. You now understand affection lacking honor is merely concealed suffering. You have exchanged the peaks and valleys of turbulent connection for the stable, serene calm of self-low. When you navigate existence from this position, you proceed with subtle grace. You need not debate your worth because you represent it. You have become a woman difficult to lose and impossible to overlook because you demonstrated choosing personal essence over harmful dependence. From today onward, you establish the atmosphere. You determine who merits your time. You have evolved from waiting to selecting. This concludes the mental process of loss and initiates the path toward affection that is finally balanced, truthful, and integrated. The ultimate insight arrives when you recognize your self-worth is not a barrier excluding affection, but a screen admitting only suitable affection. A man viewing you in this condition confronts the supreme reality about his character. If he opts to rise, he does knowing he cannot revert to laziness or unreliability. He grasps your company as a treasure requiring protection, not a benefit owed. If he opts to depart, he does with profound awareness he forfeited something exceptional due to insufficient appreciation. Your existence now enters radical truthfulness. You lack energy for manipulations, perhaps, or later. You demand straightforwardness because you practice it internally. This directness functions as safeguard for your heart. When someone enters your world attempting prior strategies of shame or ambiguous cues, your system dismisses them immediately. You need not repel them. You simply no longer align with their frequency. This level marks where you cease being the injured party and become the enlightened one. The mental evolution now completes in your nervous system. You have trained your mind that security derives from personal limits, not external validation.